Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and this is a tutorial on file chooser dialogues in Java Swing. So at the moment I've got this application and I've got this file menu, and I can go to export data and import data, and I want to make that bring up file chooser dialogues so I can choose to open a file or to save it. And we're going to look at that in this tutorial. So the first step is I want to reuse the same file chooser dialog every time because I want to customize that dialog, and I want to use it for both my open and save files file operations, and I also want it to remember where I browsed to last time I open it, and for that reason I'm going to just use one file chooser dialog rather than creating a new one every time. So here in my main frame I'm going to create a private jfile chooser, and I'm going to call that file chooser and add the import there, and let's maximize the editor with Control M. And now here in the constructor of mainframe I'll create a new file chooser object equals new jfile chooser, and I'll go down here, scroll down to where I create the menu, and I want to add a couple of action listeners on my menu items. So I'll say import data item dot add action listener, and this import data item is just the JMenu item you might remember from previous episodes in this tutorial series. So I'm going to add the action listener here, and let's add the action perform method of the action listener as we have done so many times before now. And in here, to start with, I'm just going to say file chooser dot show open dialog, and for the parent window I'll pass in mainframe dot this so that it knows where its parent window is and it knows where to appear and that sort of thing. So now if I run that, that's already going to work. File import data like this, and I can cancel it, or I can select files. But to actually get the file that's chosen, one thing is you want to check whether this open dialog returns a value that means that the users click the confirm button, the open button, rather than clicking cancel. So let's say let's wrap this in an if and say if the return value of that is jfile chooser dot approve option, then we're going to really open the file, otherwise we'll just ignore it. And for the moment I'll just do a sysout because I just want to print the name of the file for the moment, and I'll say file chooser dot get selected file. So I'm relying on the toString method of this. Actually returns a file object, but if I do sysout on it, it's just going to do I'm just going to see the path because it'll just invoke the toString method of file. So now let's run that and see how it looks. So I do file import data, and let's pick a file here. Well, you can see that I can browse between different directories, and let's pick this file and go to open, and here I've got the name of the file, and it's returning the file object that actually represents the file, so I could open this now. And in future tutorials, so we haven't actually got a data model for this application at the moment. What I'm doing really is all kind of view. In a future tutorial soon we're going to look at creating a simple data model, and when we've got the data model we can then look at saving that data, but for the moment we're just going to concentrate on getting the actual files to save to or open. And for my export data item I'll add a very similar listener. So let's just change this to export. So this is the export data item. Instead of show open dialog, quite simply I'm going to change this to show save dialog like that. And if I run this now and do export data, this brings up this save dialog that says save, and if I choose the file, then it's going to output the name of the file that I chose here because it's doing this. So that's enough for this tutorial, I think. And in the next tutorial we're going to refine this file dialog a little bit, because we're going to actually, if you see at the moment, you can choose any file, But in the next tutorial we're going to look at how you add filters to the file so that you can narrow this down to particular kinds of files with particular extensions. And in closing, I just want to point out a really useful resource here. If you go to Google, and I've mentioned this also in the first tutorial, and you search for Swing Visual Guide Components, this is a really useful page. So click on the first entry there, and if you search in there for File Chooser, you can see extensive examples on how to use the File Chooser. And one thing that it talks about here that I'm not going to show you in these tutorials is you can actually create little custom panels that show like a custom view of the files that you're looking at. And there's also some really useful code. I think if you search for utils.java in there, then there's actually they actually give you a little utils class here that gets the extension from a file name. But I'm gonna implement my own for these tutorials. But and you can easily figure that out. It's just kind of string handling stuff. But this is quite handy. So that's it for this tutorial. And in the next tutorial, as I say, we'll look at filtering this file. So join me again then, and until next time, happy coding.